All right, joining me now is Gerald Celente, publisher of the Trends Journal, to talk about the growing unrest in China, what they're protesting about, what the impending growing economic threat out of China means for the United States, and what he means when he refers to the first great war of the 21st century, as he did in the latest edition of the Trends Journal. Gerald, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Oh, great being on with you, Adam.
All right, now before we get to the first Great War, I want to ask you about a couple specific things in China. We're seeing a lot of real estate overdevelopment there, possibly some bubbles. As Americans are sort of starting to fear the coming crisscrossing of the United States and China, and who's first in terms of the world's biggest economy, do you think that there's going to be a stumbling block for China on their rise?
There is. Let's go back to 2008 when the Panic of '08 hit. People are forgetting that China played the same game that the United States did, that the European central banks did. They pumped trillions of yuan into the economy to keep it afloat. They created a bubble. No one likes to lose. So they kept the Ponzi scheme going. And what's going on in China is the same thing that's going on with, what was the report, the official report from China? Something like 137,000 uprisings and revolts in the last year.
Yeah, that's
so.
incidents, 137,000 something separate incidents, yes.
Yeah, incidents, right? It's the same thing. Adam, history is already being re-engineered. You know what they call what happened in the Middle East and North Africa. They call it pro-democracy movements. This has nothing to do with democracy. It has to do with a lot of people who can't make enough money to put a roof over their head, clothes on their back, and food in their mouth, particularly as food prices are hitting all-time highs. We're seeing revolts happen everywhere. The reason the governments hadn't toppled yet in Europe, for example, is the people are still feeling the same pain as the Middle East and in China in different ways, but they're still under the illusion that they have a democracy. So they think they're going to change it at the ballot box, but they're wising up to that as well. For instance, in Spain, they know it's a charade. In Greece, they know it's a charade. In Portugal, they know that these so-called democratic governments are a charade. So what we're going to start seeing more and more, we saw the Arab Spring, as they call it. Get ready for the European summer and the winter of worldwide discontent.
Well, maybe it'll come to China when the individual economic hardship gets to that point, but it seems, as you point out, that human beings are pragmatists. In America, as bad as things are, if they keep us fat and happy with bread and circuses, we're not going to have the kind of widespread revolts that we've seen in the rest of the world. But let's move on. I want to ask you, what is the first great war of the 21st century?
Well, you're seeing it develop already, and people aren't calling it what it is. You see all these uprisings going on. These aren't one-offs. It's like when you're a kid, they teach you that, World War I began when the Archduke Ferdinand was assassinated at Sarajevo. No, it didn't. It builds up to it. For example, we just heard Muammar Gaddafi say, listen, you're trying to kill me. Guess what? We're going to attack you. And that's what you're going to start seeing more of. So it won't be, you know how they say, Adam, that the generals always fight the last war? This is going to be wars of weapons of mass destruction, of suitcase-sized nukes, of dirty bombs going off, of biological warfare. Boom goes London, boom Paris.
Well, hold on though. Is it an exaggeration then to say what you are describing as the first great war of the 21st century is the people of the world versus the interconnected governments that are oppressing us?
You got it.
So who is going to be using the weapons of mass destruction then?
Well, you have the countries like, for instance, a Libya. What does it take to create chaos? Look at the chaos that was created in the United States when 3,000 people were killed. I mean, look what's happened in Iraq and Afghanistan. How many hundreds of thousands have been killed? So just think of the blowback that will happen when there is a revenge attack in France, in England, in the U.S., the draconian measures start taking hold. They keep clamping down more and more. You have a shock to the global economy when there's a terrorist strike. So what do? They'll do something like, I got it. How about economic martial law? We have to close the banks because
So this is the government fighting the last war against the people, using fear, using scare tactics, using false flag to make the people afraid and more dependent, right?
Hey, we got Osama bin Laden. He's wearing cement shoes and swimming with the fishes. Look how that one played.
Well, let's hope that the elected officials we have in power have at least a shred of humanity to show the people a little mercy when it comes to actually deploying the worst weapons of government. Gerald Celente, thank you so much for being with us tonight. We'll be keeping an eye on the Trends Research Institute as this develops and see what is coming next. Gerald, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.